Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the X-Men. But here's the thing, because we had just covered the hunt for Xavier not too long ago, but when it came to Marvel Comics, they gave us another crossover that took place in Uncanny X-Men, and I want to say X-Men Unlimited, but also like a mini series as well that ties into the actual event. And so with that being said, I'm going to release a series of videos that are going to be used as a way to kind of cover the whole entire storyline Magneto War. Now, to start off this video, we're going to pick up with the prelude, X-Men issue number 85. Now, the opening pages of this storyline is really more of us seeing Magneto kind of wondering what to do here. Because to him, he realized the Earth is dying. But for him, the reason why the Earth is dying is because the human race, but not because of the mutant race. And so he kind of believes in the possibility of getting rid of the human race will make the world a better place, but especially for mutant kind. But before he's able to do that, he wants to sit down and have a conversation with at least one human being. And so we see Magneto had flipped over this building that was just finished not too long ago. And so you right now have the I almost said construction team, oh my gosh, but also the guy who had designed the building arrived and realized that the entire building has been flipped over. And they're kind of wondering, how in the world was that even possible? Now, for some folks in that group right there, they believe it was done by a mutant, but they have no proof, and technically they are right because it was Magneto. Now, when you do have everyone leave, take a break, you did have Magneto arrive and try to pretend that he's the boss of one of the construction workers, the man in charge of this team, a character known as William, or Bill for short. While you have Magneto kind of wondering what to do when it comes to the human race, we now shift over to the X-Men. Now, for the X-Men currently, they're right now trying to save innocent lives from a hospital building that was set on fire. Now, while you do have the different members of the X-Men trying their best to go out of their way to save all those innocent people, outside the building, you have Charles Xavier there just waiting. Now, for Charles Xavier, let's not forget, he was finally able to reunite with his X-Men team after being saved by them back in the hunt for Xavier. Now, for Charles, he was gone for a while. With him being back here, he's now kind of wondering if his dream could actually be reached. The idea of humans and mutants living together peacefully. Can he actually reach that goal? It's now him beginning to doubt the whole idea of the X-Men. Now, for a brief moment, we do shift over to Magneto and also William. And the reason why, because for Magneto, he wants to kind of see where will William go when he tells him that it was a mutant that had flipped over the building. Now, for Magneto, he kind of has to play the idea of somebody who hates mutants because honestly, he has no proof to show William that it was a mutant that had flipped over the building. Now, technically, it was Magneto, but for right now, he's pretending to be somebody else. And so for Magneto, it's him kind of questioning William like, hey man, so how do you feel about mutants? Now, for William, he does not truly hate mutants. And the reason why, because for him, they're in LA, but also like, dude, I ain't got time to hate on somebody because they're a tad bit different from me. Now, while you have those two different things happening, a third thing does pop off, but over in the North Pole, where we do pick up with all these different robots. And these robots right now are trying to create something, and they say Magnus Rex. So we're kind of left to wonder, what in the world are they possibly creating? Now, as we do switch back over to the X-Men for a brief moment, we see that the X-Men were able to escape the hospital. The problem is that once they do get outside, they're then confronted by all these different police officers who want to shoot them down because they are mutants. Now, here's the thing, because the X-Men right now, they're holding on to babies, children that had to save from the hospital. And so they're kind of like, are y'all serious right now? You will shoot us right now as we're holding young babies in our arms right now who we just saved from the hospital. Now we have to shift back over to Magneto and also William, because for me personally, this is the starting point of the war. Like right here, Magneto now has his reason to go to war against the human race, because as he continues to poke at William to kind of see if William truly does hate mutants at all, like most humans do, you do have William once again tell Magneto, dude, no. I don't have time to hate on the mutant race. But the problem is that you didn't have William bring up another example, because to him, he's kind of like, it sounds like to me right now, you'd rather go after mutants who may or may not had a hand when it comes to our building being flipped over. But here is another example for you. Would you go back in time and kill off baby Hitler? Because if you did, that is completely wrong, because back then he was still completely innocent. Now for Magneto, that's the wrong kind of thing to use to talk to him about, because for Magneto, he had lived in World War II. He survived that moment. And so to hear the idea of the possibility of going back in time to kill off Hitler to save millions of lives and also his family, he's kind of like, heck yeah, I would. And then you have Magneto reveal who he truly is to William. For a brief moment, we now have to shift back over to, well, the North Pole. And those same robots we saw earlier, they had completed what they were building, and now they're waiting for their master. Now, I want to go ahead and shift back over to the X-Men, because for the X-Men, this moment right here helped Charles realize that he should continue to fight for his dreams. And the reason why, because you do have the X-Men right now being held at gunpoint. And for Charles, he wants to use his powers to calm everyone down. But for Storm, she says no. And you have Storm be that one and kind of show that the X-Men are not dangerous. They're not truly outlaws, that they are heroes, that they are good mutants going out of their way to help out anybody who is in need. While you have that going on, I want to go ahead and shift back over again for the final time to Magneto and also William, because for those two guys, they're continuing to have their conversation, but it's really more Magneto showing off his powers. Now for Magneto, he takes William's anger, his hatred in the wrong direction. And the reason why, because he believes that anger, that hatred is hating on him for being a mutant. But in reality, it's William saying, I don't hate you because you're a mutant. I hate you because you're a monster. Now, for me, it's kind of like, no, Magneto, you are literally scaring this guy right now. You have flipped over a building. You have him right now floating in the air with all these different pieces of metal just flying around. You're well known as a super villain that, yes, he may look at you as a villain, as a monster, not as some evil, filthy mutant. But for Magneto, he takes it in the wrong way and he flies away. Because now to him, humans are all the same. Humans are hateful. They should all be erased. While you have Charles Xavier kind of realize that he learned a lesson from the X-Men to keep pushing on for his dream, well, back at the North Pole, we learn here those robots were working for Magneto. And so now he can begin the actual process of his war to hopefully wipe out the entire human race. But now we have to shift over to the Magneto War. Now, Magneto War one shot is not really giving us the war. For me personally, it's another prelude that is leading into the idea of the war. And the reason why I'm saying that, because we do pick up with Charles Xavier right now having this dream. Now, in this dream, it's kind of picking up what we saw in the last chapter. The idea of Charles still kind of wondering if his dream can be achieved. The idea of mutants and humans living together. But in this dream, it's utopia at first. Everyone is happy, including Charles Xavier. But then out of nowhere, a crowd of people appear. Humans who hate on the mutants. Now you do have Wolverine, Gambit, and Storm appear, and they want to fight against the humans who are trying to attack Charles Xavier. Now this dream goes in a different direction because you also have Magneto arrive as well. And with Magneto being here, it's really more kind of like a callback. And what I mean is that for Magneto and Charles Xavier, they always had the same argument. The idea of, what should the mutant race do? Because for Charles Xavier, again, he still believes in the possibility that mutants and humans can live together in harmony. But for Magneto, that's not the case because humans will always try to go after mutants. There will always be a group of humans who will always hate on the mutant race. So why in the world should we as mutants go out of our way to protect those humans? And so it's the same kind of conversation they had over the years for decades now in Marvel Comics. But the thing is, it's different now because for Charles, he now has that doubt in his mind. The idea that possibly his dream cannot be achieved at all. But also the fact that sooner or later, he could be responsible for the death of the entire X-Men team. We kind of learn here that for Charles Xavier, his dream is not being controlled. It's really more the idea his dream is being directed by a character known as Ram. Now, for Ram, he's part of the Acolytes. Now, we haven't talked about the Acolytes in a very long time when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. It's the idea that Acolytes are a group of people who basically worship Magneto like a god. As a matter of fact, they believe in everything that he believes in. We see right now for the Acolytes, they came to the school of Charles Xavier to find something. So they're currently using Ram as a way to distract the X-Men long enough until they are able to find what they came looking for. You then have Ram try to direct the mind of Rogue. Now, for Rogue, it's kind of easier because for Rogue, all she really wants in life is to be loved, but to also touch other people. And so, what we're seeing right now is Ram kind of directing her mind to begin to doubt Charles Xavier. And let me explain why. Because for Charles, he did kind of promise that he would help Rogue out to figure out how to control her powers so that she'll then be able to touch other people, to at least be with someone that she loves, like Gambit. And so in this dream, we currently see her right now with Magneto. And this is a callback to so many different stories where there was always that possibility of Magneto and Rogue getting together. But also for Magneto, he can use his powers in a way to protect himself, but to allow himself to touch Rogue. And so for Rogue, it's the idea that now she has somebody that she can touch. She now has somebody that she could possibly build a relationship with. Now, her mind is somewhat connected to Charles' mind thanks to Ram. And for Charles, what he's seeing right now is his mindset completely wrong. But at the same time, though, it seems kind of like, yeah, I couldn't help her, but Magneto can possibly. You didn't have Gambit appear. Now, when he appeared, we have to remember that it's not really his mind being connected to Rogue's mind, like her mind is connected to Charles' mind. It's how her dream is going. The idea that now with him being here, her other lover, he's being upset with the idea that Rogue might leave with Magneto. So in her dream right now, she's seeing two guys fighting over her. But you have Ram tell us that there's a possibility that she does enjoy the idea of seeing two guys who are in love with her fight for her. But this kind of leads into us seeing Wolverine's dream. Now, for Wolverine, his dream is somewhat predictable, but not really at the same time. And the reason why I'm saying that because you do see Wolverine once again fighting in his dream, like a wild animal, wild beast. But you didn't have Magneto appear. Now, this is a callback to Fatal Attractions. And the reason why, because in that storyline, you have Magneto rip off the adamantium off the bones of Wolverine. And so ever since that storyline up to now in our coverage, Wolverine only had bone claws. But it's also the idea that for Wolverine, we had learned that, really Charles did at first, but we had learned that for Wolverine, when he first had gained his mutant ability, he was supposed to slowly turn into a wild beast with a wild beast mindset, right? But thanks to adamantium put on his bones, it kind of stopped that process. Now for Magneto, when he had ripped off the adamantium, that process was then allowed to continue again. Now, thanks to Elektra, Stick, and a few other characters, they were kind of able to help Wolverine stay as a man rather than a beast. But you didn't have Magneto appear in this dream and begin to question Wolverine in a way kind of like, hey, buddy, so are you man or are you a beast? And for Wolverine, it's both, but he's more man than beast. Once you do have Magneto being able to defeat Wolverine like he did on Fatal Attractions in Wolverine's dream, you have Charles, whose also mind is connected to Wolverine's mind, just get very upset. And we see that Fatal Attractions, storyline happen again, where Wolverine does get badly injured by Magneto, Charles gets ticked off and shuts down the mind of Magneto. Now, once you have Charles do that, he wakes up and he realizes what's happening right now. The Acolytes are outside his school right now, and they're trying to attack the X-Men, but also they're trying to look for something. But now we have to switch over to Joseph. Now, for Joseph, for me personally, he's the other Magneto. Because when it came to our coverage over the X-Men, he appeared out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere. He woke up one day kind of wondering who he was, where he was, and why he's there for. He had no answers for himself at all. And so for Joseph, for a long time, it was just him trying to figure out who he was, but also working with the X-Men. Now, he met another character, better known as Sabra. And for Sabra, she kind of had information about Magneto's past and hand that info over to Joseph. But the problem is that for Joseph, even though he's now sitting down reading all these different articles or files about him, it's not really helping jog his memory at all because he is unable to remember anything from his supposed past life. Now, for Joseph, he's also being confronted by Quicksilver. And for Quicksilver, it's more the idea of him trying to build a better life with Magneto. And let me explain, because around this time in Marvel Comics, for Magneto, all we knew was he had two children, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. We had no idea by this point in time that Polaris was his daughter as well. But when it comes to Joseph, with him unable to remember anything from his past and how much of a horrible person he was to his children, for Quicksilver is him saying, listen, I've been seeing you trying to do better in your life, and I want to see if we're able to do better as well when it comes to our relationship. I want things to change between us for the betterment of you, me, but also our entire family, like the Scarlet Witch and also my daughter. And so for Joseph, he would love the idea of being able to build a bond, to have a family with the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and also his daughter as well. Now, for me personally, I just realized something for Joseph. We have not seen him sit down and have that conversation with the Scarlet Witch. Like, it has only been Quicksilver. Now, technically, she was away in the Heroes Reborn reality. By this point, though, she's been back, and so has the Avengers as well. When we do jump back over to the X-Men, what we're seeing right now is the X-Men fighting against the Acolytes still. Now, the battle does go on for a few pages, but I kind of want to go ahead and skip over to the end of the battle. Here's the reason why, because for the Acolytes, once they are defeated, they then ask Charles if they can join the X-Men. Charles says no. Again, this is another callback because in the early 1990s for Charles Xavier, he tried to fix the mind of Sabretooth. Now, as we all know, that went south very quickly for a few characters because of Charles' idea. But when it comes to Charles, he no longer has that compassion to try to help people like the Acolytes or like Sabretooth. But now for Rogue, she's kind of upset about the idea that he turned them away. But for Charles, he tells us no. The Acolytes only came here because they were looking for something. They're trying to figure out if there is a possibility that Magneto had returned. When we do switch over to the other Magneto, we see him currently having a conversation with Amelia. Now, for Amelia, she was also part of the Acolytes as well, but it kind of seems like she has her own group right now working with Magneto. But for Magneto, he's asking her to do one thing for him because right now, his war could cause the death of many. The whole entire world might catch on fire. But he wants to make sure that his children are well protected. The Scarlet Witch and also Quicksilver as well. And that ends this tie-in or this one-shot that Marvel gave as a prelude to the Magneto War. But now we switch over to Uncanny X-Men issue number 366. Now with this issue, it's really more of us now focusing on the idea of the news reporting about the Acolytes going across the country and attacking different genetic research facilities. Now, for the X-Men, they're trying to figure out where are the acolytes going to attack next, because if they're able to figure that out, then most likely they can head there first where the acolytes get there and hopefully stop the acolytes. Now, they're also having a hard time trying to track where the acolytes are going, but they also realize they're moving up north. Now, this chapter is, for me personally, the last prelude leading into the actual Magneto War storyline. The reason why I'm saying that because we do see Magneto right now getting ready for his final attack against the human race. Now, we don't know what his plan is just yet, but we get the idea that plan could possibly kill off the entire human race. Now, I want to go ahead and switch over to Joseph. And here's the reason why, because we finally kind of get our answer about Joseph. Like, who is he? Is he Magneto or is the other one Magneto? And so in these 2 pages, you have Joseph right now getting some tests done. And with those tests, they come back and say, hey, listen, so the DNA say like you are Magneto, but at the same time, it's saying that you are possibly a clone of Magneto. And so now we kind of get the idea that Joseph is a clone of Magneto. But the question is now, who in the world cloned Magneto to make Joseph? Now, I want to go ahead and shift back over to the X-Men because this right here is really important because you do have the X-Men being able to locate the acolytes. Now, this battle is very short-lived. And the reason why, because you do have the acolytes being able to defeat our heroes in a matter of like 3 or 4 pages. But you have our heroes realize that for the acolytes, they're not really trying to attack these different buildings. They're really trying to focus more on the X-Men here. Like, it does seem like they're trying to keep the X-Men busy for some unknown reason. Now, we kind of get the idea that it could be Magneto saying, hey, acolytes, I need you guys to make sure that the X-Men are distracted long enough to allow me the chance to pull off my big plan. And so you do have the X-Men kind of wondering, what are the acolytes truly up to? And so now we switch over to the robot that does work for Magneto, better known as Ferris. Now, when it comes to this robot, it does arrive at the United Nations building in Manhattan. And of course, it wants to have a conversation with all the world leaders at the UN building. Now, police officers, they're freaking out and they're trying their best to figure out what in the world is going on here. But unfortunately, none of their guns can work on this robot at all. But you do have the robot being able to enter the actual building. And so this leads us back over to the X-Men. Now, for the X-Men, they're beginning to realize that for the Acolytes, it does seem like they're trying to distract the X-Men, kind of like lead them somewhere or lead them away from something else happening in a different direction, kind of keep the X-Men busy. And so for the X-Men on the Blackbird, they're trying to figure out what are the actual plans for the Acolytes. And so when we do switch over to Magneto, we see him being able to release his powerful EMP. And a very powerful EMP is going to be very important for the later stuff to come down the road when it comes to Magneto War and what he is actually trying to achieve here. Because again, at first it did seem like his goal was to get rid of the human race. But we then switch over to Joseph. And for Joseph, it's him trying to handle the fact that there's now a possibility that he is a clone of Magneto. But while you have Joseph right now trying to figure out his life at the moment, he's then confronted by this woman. Now, this random lady here, she's very upset about the idea of the job she gave him to do, but he's not able to accomplish that job. Now, for him, he has no idea what she's even talking about, but it doesn't matter because she does knock him out and tells him to call her mother. But with that EMP, it does hit the X-Men Blackbird. And so with the Blackbird now being affected by this EMP, they go down just like that. The X-Men now have crashed in the Arctic, kind of pushing the X-Men into the off-board area of this whole entire war that Magneto has right now with the human race. But let's go ahead and switch back over to the UN. Because you have Ferris explain what Magneto truly wants here. And so you have Ferris say, when it came to Magneto, all he wanted to do was protect the mutant race. As a matter of fact, he built a safe haven for mutants when it came to Asteroid M, right above Earth. And that was a safe haven for the mutant race away from you guys, but you took that away from him. And so for Magneto, he now demands a safe haven for mutants across the world, somewhere here on Earth. You must grant him that, because if you don't, that EMP that he had released will continue to pulse over and over again until you go ahead and agree to his terms. And so now we are officially into Magneto War.